is Jana Lee. I am one of the church ministries directors here at the conference office. We did some restructuring. Essentially, that means that myself and my counterpart, Jason Calvert, oversee the church ministries department together. We are co-directors, and that means that if there's a ministry in your church, we're it. We're your go-to resource for that ministry. Call our department and we'll figure it out if not. But that's how we help you. And our goal is to help. We're very intentional about using the word engaging because we actually are very hopeful. If you guys would do me a huge favor and join this group, then we can have some good discussion today. Thank you. So one of the hopes with the way we have redone some things at the office is that we are actually helping your whole church, all the ministries that your church does work together. And so when by us being over the whole department, our goal is as we're resourcing our different churches, we're looking for ways that the church ministries can overlap together and go in the same direction instead of this ministry does this and this ministry does this, because most of our churches have one person wearing multiple hats anyways. And so we're hoping that we can use that intentionally. So that's what we're doing in church ministries. And we would love to help you. I'd like to get a sense. This is you can tell already, some of you have your skeptical looks in your faces. This is going to be a bit of an interactive workshop. It's going to be really helpful if I have a sense of what your home church situation is like. So if you have a rural church that has 20 to 40 or under attendees regularly, raise your hand if that's where you come from. Okay? Yeah, like your regular attendance, okay? If you are from a more like a city-ish based church, raise your hand. Okay. City-ish. And that's a lot of Oregon, right? City-ish. I'm not sure, like Salem is city, but like Grants Pass, is that rural or city? It's hard to say, like ish. That's where the ish comes in. There's no doubt with Scappoose, like that is definitely rural, but there's a lot of ishness in the Oregon Conference. I love it. I get to drive around and go to different churches. Adventist background, is anybody in here? I don't want to call you out. So if you're from an Adventist background, like you go to an Adventist church, good. Making sure, because we're going to kind of talk Adventist insider language, and I want to be aware if not. So just be aware if you're newish to Adventism, the content more particularly applies, but honestly, it's research-based, and this is from a lot of great sources. So I'm super excited. My background, I was a pastor for about 20 years before joining the conference office 3 years ago, and half of that time was as a children and family pastor. So I kind of fell into it accidentally. I have 2 teenage boys. When they were young, we came to a church, and that was kind of a ministry the church had, but not really intentionally. It was because it was kind of school-based. So they had families there, but they hadn't fully developed it as a family ministry. It was kind of Sabbath schools in school. And so as my kids grew in, we kind of grew that into a family ministry concept there. And that's kind of how I fell into children and family ministries. Lots of wonderful leaders that had been building to that point. It was just kind of bringing it all together was what I had a chance to do. And so that's how then I ended up doing children's ministries at the conference office, which I retitled Children and Family because you can't reach children without the whole family being somewhat in the picture. It's very, very challenging because they are dependent on their parents, and their main home influence is their parent. So that's why I combined, I say it's one ministry, family and children. You can't do one without the other. So that's how I came into the conference office from there. I live in Battleground, and so I do commute down here, but my kids are in school there, and it's great. And my kids are 15 and 17. And my husband works at Adventist Health Portland. So this is where we've been for the past 10 years. 2010, so I think it's getting a little longer than 10 years now. 15 years this fall. Wow, time goes fast. When I have been traveling around the conference now since 2022, and visiting the variety of churches. I've been to a lot of churches, so it's interesting to go from being a local pastor to traveling around because I'd only had this picture, the church that I was at, that was my main picture of ministry. But I have much more of a sense of what's happening all over Oregon. So what we're going to talk about today is actually things that are happening all over Oregon. So if you hear something that sounds familiar to your church, I'm not picking on any one church. These are situations that are very normal and very common. And I genuinely believe that if we make some intentional choices, the best part of our church future is ahead of us. That God is still and going to be doing incredible things in our churches. God does this thing that I don't understand and I have questions about, and that is God entrusts us with the ministry. If something isn't working, God doesn't come in and fix it. God entrusts us to be the ones to implement His kingdom on earth. I think that's a crazy plan. I really question that plan. But I trust God, and if we trust God, we have to say God has chosen us to be the ones that are implementing His kingdom principles here and showing God's love here. It's through us, and it's through each of us in here making a choice to be that vessel for God to work on earth. It's no one else's job to do church now in this day and age. There is no other fingers to point. There's no other thing. God has asked us to be His vessels on earth, and we are the ones responsible for receiving that from God and serving God. Amen? Amen. So we're gonna do this on purpose. Okay. You guys are my trial audience for my first ever parable metaphor. Can we make up a word? Paraphor? Medable. Okay? Here we go. This is Jana. Jana is, let's just say she's newly on her own. Again, remember, this is a medable. And so this isn't exactly accurate. There is no accurate historical history here. I'm just picking on only myself. So she's newly on her own, and she finds a place to live. And it looks like this. And so she goes, okay, I guess this is what a house looks like. And so she's living in this house that looks like this, and it just doesn't feel homey or comfortable. Something's missing from her life, right? She doesn't know what. Something is missing from her life. And as she's going around, she hears about this incredible place that takes houses and makes them homey and welcoming and comfortable. This incredible place where you can go and get all the things you need, and you can enjoy living and enjoy your home and space and live to the fullest in your home. And so Jana goes to this incredible place called IKEA. And Jana is amazed at IKEA and all the incredible things that it has there, and it just feeds her soul to go and see how she can find these different ways and put them together in unique ways, and she can make her home a comfortable place that she loves to be, and that she wants to be there. And so she does. She makes her home a cozy, comfortable space and puts up art and a comfy couch and just thinks, oh man, more people need to know about IKEA and how great it is that you can make a house a home and make it comfortable and wonderful, because having a comfortable home is so important to Jana. This is her passion. A comfortable home is her passion in life. And so soon she finds people who need help making their houses into homes, and she tells them about the incredible place of IKEA, and not only that, she goes and helps them build their IKEA furniture, and so that they too can know the joy of having a comfortable home to rest in at the end of the day. And so she spends lots of time at IKEA and building IKEA furniture and telling people about the amazingness that IKEA furniture is. And so she does this all over the place until she kind of runs out of people, and people are less excited about it. But then she hears about a place far away that needs help making houses into homes, and she goes, this is my thing. So she loads up a truck. Oops. There we go. She loads up her moving truck full of IKEA furniture and goes to the faraway place ready to help with the only tool you'll ever need in life. She's got her tool, she's got her truck full of furniture, and she is ready to help people make houses into homes with IKEA stuff. But when she arrives at the place, she notices that their houses look a little different, that the people building the houses are building them out of not wood, but out of cement block. And she finds out that's because it's a really damp environment and that this is a much sturdier way to build homes there. Not only that, the people have a different taste in what makes them feel cozy and warm and comfortable, and they're not that interested in her IKEA furniture. She still goes through the process of building and building and building and building IKEA furniture that she brought down there and puts it in these places, and people are nice about it, but they're not really that interested. They kind of put it to the side. They don't really pay attention. Not only that, the particle board starts to like crumble apart in the damp environment, and it doesn't quite work. And so now we're back to Jana, who has a choice. Does she get frustrated because people are not interested in IKEA furniture? Does she pack up her moving truck and her tool and go home alone to her own IKEA-built place and kind of just say, fine, I'm going to enjoy my thing, and they are on their own? Or does she start listening and say, wait a minute, my passion wasn't actually IKEA, right? IKEA wasn't the passion. The passion was making the home comfortable. And IKEA was the avenue for doing that. And I get so focused on the avenue that I forgot the original goal. Hopefully it's rather obvious now that this parable metaphor, I believe this is the crossroads that church is at right now. I am a fifth generation Adventist, all right? Missionary Adventists on both sides. I grew up in my dad as a pastor in churches, loving church, feeling loved, wanting the same for my family and my kids, right? Loving the connection of church. And so I want that for my kids, right? And so I bring them to church, and we're in a church, and it has great, and then something isn't quite right for my kid may not love it anymore. And so some of the story in my home is when pandemic hit and we were doing church from home, my kids started to really like the comfort of home and getting them to go back to church. They didn't love that anymore. Then I moved to the conference office, and though we still attend the church that I pastored, they kind of feel it's different now because they grew up with one group of pastors, right, that they knew, and mom was one of them, and now not. This is just our story, right? But I had to think about this. Was my goal for my kids to go to church? Was that ever the goal? To force church on my kids? Is it ever the goal when we love people to force? We ask this question a lot. And we forget this one thing, that discipleship was never about church attendance. Church is a tool, and it's a good tool and a useful tool, and it's been good for me. Sydney, he's gonna do what he says. There's going to be group discussion later, and so, although I may actually kick you back there to help lead a group discussion later because I know your gifts too well. No, I'm teasing you though, but thank you. So because we love church, and it meant so much to us, we want that for other people, and that is a wonderful, good thing. But it's not the goal. The goal was never for people to come to church, right? The goal was always for people to know Jesus and follow Jesus. Oh, Verna and Sydney, you guys are a dangerous combo. I'll let you stay together because I think you'll be great. Here's a difficult slide, because I want you to think about it. What was your passion? Why did you do church? What did you love about church? What made you want to be a part of it? Why are you still doing this thing we call church? What does it mean to you? We have to come back to that because this next slide I'm almost scared to show you. Passionately following Jesus means that accepting that with culture change becomes the necessity of church change. Culture has changed in our world around us, we know that. And if we aren't willing to face that as a church, we are absolutely at a change or die place in the Adventist church in North America. All right? We are using the tools that used to work over and over. They are good tools. They were good tools. They did good things. But in the culture change that is now, it is IKEA furniture in a tropical environment. It's going to fall apart and die. All right? So, now what? Take a breath. Change is a scary word. So I have some comfort for you. I honestly don't think we come anywhere near changing our main church service as our first step. Maybe not even the step. So if you love your main church service, keep loving it. Don't worry. Don't focus there. Don't try to change that. Okay? I promise if it comes to that, you will be in a different mentality and be able to get there. But that's never the start place, because here's the truth. If they're not there now, they're not coming because you change it. Right? So keep doing what you're doing to help you grow spiritually at that time. And we're going to look for other places and other ways to engage families. Keep going to the spaces that feed your soul. Enjoy them. Worship with the people who still enjoy worshiping the way that you do. Find ways to connect with each other. Find joy in that Sabbath connection. And we'll work on other ways of engaging families until you as your home church see the need for that change together. Okay? So when we talk about church change, I don't even want to touch the 11 o'clock service or whatever time you meet. I don't want to touch it. That's not the goal, because again, that's just changing the tool. But we don't even know what we're building yet, right? So if you don't know what you're building, it doesn't help to change the tool, right? Okay, so what I'm talking about right now is remembering why we do this in the first place. We're going to do a little review here. We talk about this a lot in my world, but I never know what world you're coming from. So if you hear this all the time, bear with me. It's not the point of the seminar, but we need to all get on the same page. All right? Sound good? Okay. Understanding generational values. So with every generation comes a different focus on values, right? Different generations value different things differently. Different does not inherently mean better or worse. Say that again. Different does not mean better or worse. All right? Sometimes you can have some debate, but just hear that. Just because somebody likes different things than you does not mean it's a judgment on the thing that you like. All right? Your favorite color can be yellow. Their favorite color can be purple. One is not better than the other. Okay? That's also true when it comes to values of the different generations. And so understanding values helps us feel less judged about our own values, okay? Just remembering that your values are important and good, and so are theirs. Okay, so we're going to do some generation speak. This is the most common that I'm seeing, so I'm going to use these words. You might have heard other ones, so here we go. We have all heard a lot of this by now, hopefully. Baby boomers, that's generally the zone that is considered, they were born in that zone, they're baby boomers. Gen X, mid-1960s to early 1980s. Millennial is mid-1980s to late 1990s. Generation Z, early 2000s to 2012. Generation Alpha is 2012 to the mid-2020s. We are now starting to talk about the next generation. I haven't even heard what we're nicknaming it yet, so I'm just telling you that's a thing. It's not super important to know the exact dates, as much as you're going to understand the people you're working with and their values if you kind of know what's happening in their generation, okay? So we're going to do that next, a little quick thing. I see some of you writing. I don't want to go too fast, so you get the approximate dates of what we're talking about. And the reason it matters, here, the next slides actually show it, so I'll keep going for that. Oh, you know what? It doesn't. Sorry. So this one was to 1964. So most of us kind of know this. These are some of the defining traits and values. Coming out of World War II, a lot of the optimism and ambition, right? Strong work ethic. Boomers are incredible workers. Just grateful for still, camp meeting doesn't happen without the work ethic that comes with the boomer generation, and I'm grateful for it. They're career oriented, right? These are the ones that start in a career and stay in it till death, right? Like why would I retire? Committed to growth. And I mean that and what I mean by that is it was very much seen as your goal was you start here and you go there in your career, right? You want to grow in your career. You want to get to the next level of things. That's the growth commitment there. Always aiming for the next thing, the next level in your career, in your sphere. Social justice and diversity. We act like these are new terms, but if you remember, right, we've got the Vietnam War protests, we have the civil rights, the space race. These were really important social justice, right, and diversity movements. Baby boomers are the ones who started caring that people got treated equally and that we had a say in social justice things, right? So those are not new terms. Try to remember that. I know that we can have some triggering words in our politics today, but they weren't always triggering words. Okay, stability through acquisition and career respect, right? Having money and having a home and having stability in that way is very important, one of the values of that generation. If you are a baby boomer and you're in here, I'm not saying all of those are exactly you, but I think we can agree that as a whole, those are some of the defining ways of the boomers, the baby boomers interacted in society. This is not necessarily church related, but that mentality. You have a job, you have a home, and you contribute to society, right? And then you fight for your rights. Those are some pretty key things that I've seen. Okay, Generation X. Very independent and self-reliant, somewhat because of the boomer emphasis on career growth. Gen X is sometimes called the forgotten generation because I'm one of them, were dropped off at home after school and as parents went back to work, right? And so we became very self-reliant and independent, and we're proud of it and don't mess with that, all right? And we're adaptable and resilient as a whole. We are like, mom wasn't home and the kitchen caught on fire. We put it out with a fire extinguisher and never reported it, right? Like that is pretty standard for our generation. Embracing nonconformity. I remember when I was first out of college, first hearing about generations. It wasn't something we talked about a ton with names before then. And they actually had Gen X split into like 8 different categories because, it was not one thing. It's the first you do you generation. You can, color your hair and get a tattoo and we're good with that. Or whatever you want, you do you. That's very much the Gen X. And starting to really value more of the work-life balance. Now, we were raised by parents with a strong work ethic, so we have a lot of guilt when we do the work-life balance. But we also kind of see, I was dropped off at home, and I kind of want to see my kids a little more than my parents did. And maybe I'm talking a little about this personally. You've caught that I am Gen X. I have a great relationship with my parents. I am truly, truly grateful. My mother started med school when I was 6 years old. My dad is a pastor. She has incredible energy and was always, I did feel very close to her all growing up. So this is zero critique. We did spend a lot of time alone. And at 14, I worked at summer camp and went to boarding school. And so basically moved out at 14, right? And that was not even blinked at that time. I was put on a plane, somebody picked me up. We kind of knew, we had no phones. And so I absolutely loved my childhood. And I look at my kids and I'm like, you're not leaving home at 14. Now they're 15 and 17 and I'm questioning that decision now. But we are trying harder for the work-life balance in the midst of the guilt of I should work really hard, I should be with my kids, and we're stuck between these generations because what we come next is the millennial generation who are very much into the mental health and self-care. And so we hear that and we're like, you know what, that does matter. My parents didn't teach me that, and we're kind of in between those two values and we live there as Gen X. Millennial are the ones who are they were born before tech was really crazy, but the home personal computer was very normal for them. Even more on the embracing diversity and inclusion. They want a career that has purpose. They're not staying somewhere to do a job to get the paycheck, all right? They want to feel like they have a purpose. mental health is going to be, I should have put that at the top and overall. So they will take a break. Sydney and Verna, are you guys sitting on the taped seats? I knew some of you would end up being my rule breakers. I should have known it'd be you two. Oh. Oh, it's just Verna. Okay, it's just Verna. I'm calling out Verna then. I can call Verna was my husband's Pathfinder leader. So we've known each other a few years. She's known my husband longer than I have. So they are the ones that will take, a day off for a mental health break, right? That mental health comes first. I know some of us are laughing. There's a lot of extremes here. Most aren't in the extreme, but mental health is valued over resiliency. Okay? Oh, and so that's an important thing to be aware of. And I think we can learn a lot from that, because I wonder how much more healthy and resilient we'd be if we had valued mental health more, right? But finding that they are very collaborative. Millennials are much less likely to be able to give one a task for them to accomplish on their own. They want to do it with somebody else in a group, work together. And they also love mentorship. They don't want to just be handed something and walk away. They want you there working with them, teaching. And again, so I think we have some millennials in here. I'm not going to start guessing ages. But again, not everything applies to everyone, but that's something that I have seen very commonly, is they would much rather be alongside and helping. So when I work with families and children, I have a lot of parents who would come to church with their kids and happily step in and help when they're there, but they are not the ones stepping in and saying, I'll be in charge of this. That's just not their style for the most part. Okay. I didn't do a Gen Z one, mostly because maybe I probably should have, now that I say that out loud, but most parents right now, when we're talking about families, we're getting into Gen Z as parents, but that's mid-20s and people are waiting longer. So as we're talking about families, I didn't do a slide for Gen Z, but they are becoming the next generation of parents. And I honestly, as far as how they engage in church, I don't have a good pulse on it. And so we can do that another time. And you can also just look it up, what their key values are. Gen Z is early 2000s, to about 2012. And again, there's always going to be some overlap there. And so,
like millennials, I have a 25 and 19-year-old, and
right, you're always going to see kind of that overlap in how that goes. I would say Gen Z they're the first generation born with like an iPhone in their hand, right? So I have two Gen Z kids, 2007 and 2010. And so I can see a lot from their friends. They're not as likely to speak up if they don't like something. They keep it to themselves and then post about it. So they are very able to engage really well online and less so face-to-face. You don't get as much reaction. They very much value opinion and letting other people have their opinion and listening to each other's opinions. They see a lot of nuance in the world and much less black and white, and they want to value different people's perspectives and really listen and pay attention to the different perspectives online. I say online, that's where a lot of their interaction happens, but they really believe in that, and they are also more likely to form their groups based on similar opinions. Right? We all do that, but they can really isolate online a little more. And then debating online, that's a very normal thing too. Dark humor is also super common because they've been kind of raised in a bit of a negative environment, and they've seen all of their parents fighting during COVID online and with each other, and they hear all the negative politics. And so they tend to internalize and then kind of make it a joke. And so you might see some humor from Gen Z that you find really offensive. If you work in a hospital, you might understand like hospital humor. You make the dark jokes because how else do you survive? It's a similar thing with Gen Z. They take a lot of the negative that's happening in society and just make it a joke. And so they value humor as a way to connect is something that I would just say. These are not official slides. This is what I'm seeing with my kids and their friends, using humor to connect. Because life is so serious for them, what is being said and what is happening around them. Okay, so that's the summary. This is not the focus of it, but it's important to remember, like I said, this. 2 facts to keep in mind as we're moving forward. Values don't have hierarchy. Understanding the different generations and what they value is simply understanding it. It is not a comparison, right? They value mental health while another values a work ethic, right? We have to recognize the difference and take that little feeling of that you had about one of those things and say, okay, that feels off to me, but that's not the purpose. Here is the second one that we don't talk about nearly enough, and I'm curious if you guys, what you think of it. It is always the older person's job to connect. Mm-hmm. It is very easy for us to sit in church and say, why aren't they here? Mm-hmm. Or why didn't such and such call me? Or how do I do this? It is always the older person's job to connect. So if you're working with somebody younger, it is your job to connect and not worry if they aren't calling you back and aren't doing the things that we have to work in some functionality, but not have our feelings hurt by that. Our job is to love the next generation. That's it, right? We can love the next generation unconditionally. And that means not just if they come to church, not just if they come to our events, not just if they like the things that we like. We love them. That's what matters here. Every human rates values differently. But stepping back, we know there's no hierarchy. Just remember that another person rating the same values as, or different, is simply, not rating the same values. I want to make sure I don't miss the key points that I was trying to make here. Another person not rating those same values as highly is simply a difference, which we factor in, not a critique, okay? So they're not critiquing you. And even if they are, it doesn't matter. All right, so then I get this question, okay, fine, if the goal isn't ever if the goal was never in the first place to get them to come to church, if that was never the purpose was always, some of you who were here longer, anybody remember what I said? What was our goal? What did church do? What was our purpose of church? Create a home. Yes, I can create a home of learning discipleship, right?
Get to know Jesus.
A place to get to know Jesus. We focus then on the church instead of remembering that the goal was always for people to know Jesus. So before we move forward in the seminar, we have to recognize that I called it engaging families in church, and it is, but I don't mean by getting them to come to the 11 o'clock service. Mm-hmm. I want you to let go of that goal. It may or may not end up being a byproduct, but if you can really make your goal about sharing Jesus' love and engaging families in the love of Christ, the best tools for that and the avenues will become clear over time. You have to accept that we're living in a little bit of an ambiguous time, that we're not going to know what church of the future looks like because we're not there yet. And so we got to stop aiming for church to look like it did when we remember it. We can love it. We can enjoy it. We can worship there, but that's not the goal, is not to get back to a magical time. All right? And that we can go through lots of that. I had wonderful church experiences. I also have lots of friends who were hurt in those exact same churches by people who showed up smiling on a Sabbath morning and did something harmful behind the scenes. I'm grateful I didn't have that, but I've heard enough of those stories to know that whatever I'm seeing as some beautiful past was also had its dark sides. I'm not saying it wasn't worth doing. I'm saying it's never the goal, right? It's not a perfect past. We did beautiful things. So some of you maybe have seen some of the buttons going around campus. I'm running the children's divisions, and in the 8 to 10-year-olds, we're doing buttons and button trading. And I made a funny one because this is my pastoral experience. I'm going to tell you guys. I made one that it's not for the kids. I just made it for a few people here. And it's an outline of somebody who's using a walker. And it says young adult for life. And it's funny because in one way we want to support our young adults for life, and I think that's great, and it doesn't matter how old we are. But I think the second is, as a pastor, the number of times every church I went to would talk about, when I was a young adult, my church did this. And they're still a part of whatever group that was that just kept getting older and older and older. And then they're positive that the next group needs to do that young adult service, and then young adults would come to church. It applies to families too, right? When I had kids, we brought them to church every week. Why isn't my child bringing my granddaughter to church every week, right? We ask that question over and over, and it's just the wrong question. Or maybe it's the right question, but it's about understanding values, and that their value of family time or their memories and their hurt of church or their overwhelming mental load means that going to church on Sabbath is actually just mentally exhausting. And the idea of one more exhausting thing in an overloaded world where we have 2 full-time working parents to barely make ends meet and kids in a really hard place, that church is a thing that is actually more exhausting for our families than it is soul-feeding. And empathizing with that. Even if we think, but if you came, you'd have a village. There is good there. We just have to remember that there's reason, understanding their values. So the question here, can we come to this? So how do we move forward when they're not here? It is a sign of our love for our own experiences that make us want this for others. And it's going to have to look different now. So do we give up? Does Jana take her Allen wrench? Some of you weren't here at the beginning, but we had a little fun parable. Does Jana take her IKEA Allen wrench and go home to the familiar that she knows? Or does Jana learn new tools and learn about the place that she's trying to make house a home? We have to make that choice, okay? So, first step, finding common ground. We're going to connect best with people when we find the place that we connect with them, right? When you can talk to somebody about something that you both are passionate about, that is so helpful. And this is biblical. This is Paul talking about how the early church was going around and meeting people. He says, I have voluntarily become a servant to any and all in order to reach a wide range of people. Religious, non-religious, meticulous, moralist, loose-living, immoralist, the defeated, the demoralized, whoever. Did he just describe like all the generations just there? I love the Message version sometimes. I think it takes that heart, it puts the heart in the text. I didn't take on their way of life, right? We're not saying give up your values. But I entered their world and tried to experience things from their point of view. And I didn't mean to skip that middle part. That's very important. I kept my bearings in Christ, right? We keep our bearings. Hi, Kara. Thanks for being here. Keeping your bearings in Christ, but entering into their world. We are so often sitting in our churches saying, why aren't they here? When the question is, why aren't you there? Why aren't you out there connecting with families, learning where their values are, learning where their needs are, and sharing Jesus where they are? That is our calling as Christians. So here are some more places that we have in common. This is very recent studies out of Barna. I so appreciate that Barna does so much Christian church research. We have a lot in common. I think we should focus more on our commonalities between the generations, right? How often do you keep up with people who matter most to you in in-person conversations? That's pretty high. Most people want to have an in-person conversation. As much as we talk about online and we're Facebooking, most people actually would rather have connection in person. This is an area that our churches can really help. If people are wanting to connect in person, if they value connecting in person, we need to figure out how to use this wonderful thing we have called church to help people connect with each other, right? They can get a sermon online. I'm not saying we throw out sermons. I just want to point out they get sermon content they like online. They listen to music they like on Spotify, right? You can do activities with your kids at home with the TV on, and TV on, that ages me right there just saying that. The things that we used to go to church for are no longer what families need from church. So we're going to have to say, what do families need? And we know one of those is connection. People are lonely and they want a place to connect. Okay, another thing we have in common. Which of the following do you feel should be the purpose of a church's physical space? Let's see, this is hard. So Gen Z, providing, look at this top line. They're all pretty high on providing a place for spiritual growth, right? They genuinely want spiritual growth. I know that millennials have this sense of community as well, right? So there's a lot of similarity through there. Meditation, reflection. But if you look, worship and fellowship, and I'm not sure on the questioning the difference between creating a sense of community and fellowship. I'd have to look deeper into the questions, but it is different, right? A sense of community is different than just chatting and fellowship, right? A sense of community, especially I would say since that's the millennial column, is that deeper feeling of being wanted and seen and valued. That is what your community does for you, even if you only show up once every 6 months, right? Because regular attendance, not going to be their value. So if you're judging them on regular attendance, you're never gonna connect with them. That's just not their value, all right? So focusing on what actually connects with families and helping your church do that. Now remember, again, I'm not talking about the 11 o'clock. I'm talking about other ways you as a church family can find ways to connect with people, okay? All right. Yes, absolutely, Sydney. You know, it really is. I'm not sure. They just don't see church as that purpose. So I'm not sure where they do see that purpose, but that's just not what they see. This is research. Yeah. It's worth noting. And remembering also that this is largely our current parents right now. So if you're looking at people with kids, right? So I'm at the tail end of Gen X, and my kids are 15 and 17. So most people with kids are my age and younger, right? And they're not looking for a church as a place for prayer, meditation, reflection. And maybe that's because when you bring your kids to church, you're not doing much of any of that. Yes, Stephen.
A quick question. So these statistics is this just the United States or is this worldwide?
Yeah, this is 2,000 U.S. adults from 2022. So it's pretty recent. Yeah, this is our society. This is U.S. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? It's good to know. Sometimes we have to accept the fact even if we don't like it. Barna does good research. So if you're looking to connect with families, improving your worship experience is likely not going to be the thing that's going to connect with families. Yes?
Similarly, I have children that are the same ages as yours.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would be in the Generation X category.
All right.
And I've unfortunately had the experience of pastoring the last few districts where there weren't really quality, age-appropriate ministries for my children.
Right.
And I've noticed here on the list in this research that it's mostly about self-service, what's good for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been trying to encourage my children, my boys, I also have 2 boys, that are not always enthusiastic about attending church, simply because there's not much for them there in the age group. That the community provides us an opportunity to serve and figure out how we can collectively ministry to other people, where we really don't get that.
Right.
And I don't see that kind of reflected in this research. Are millennials asked, the value of serving others and the value of connecting in a meaningful way to provide ministry and the work that we're called to do?
I love that you're asking this, and I do find a lot of times we are asking questions from our own sense of values, right? The questions we're asking are like, wait, I value this. What do you think about that? And they will answer, but it won't get them to church. And we're not, again, that's not the goal. So we did this recently I forget, we try to do these surveys, but when we make the surveys from our own sense of values and questions, they'll give us opinions about our values, but we're not actually getting to the heart of their values. Does that make sense? So what I hear from you is a good value of you want your kids to experience community and service, and those are really good values. And what's on top of that, what we have to do is connect with our young people, our families, I'll get to you, and say, wait, what do you value and how can church meet you at your values?
So a follow-up question. Obviously, so my children were baptized. I had the privilege of baptizing them. But I always wanted to make sure that they had gone from the borrowed faith to the own faith experience, and they had their own devotional lives where they felt God speaking to their hearts through His Word. So if we're following the value system of individuals, we're going to be obviously migrating towards the value system of Jesus, right? And Jesus said, I've not come to be served, but to serve, giving you an example that
Right.
you should go and do likewise. So wouldn't you assume that their value system would begin to conform more to the value system of Christ in that regard?
I love that. If they're following Christ, I hope all of us in our value system is conforming. And I believe that all the values we're talking about, you can see reflected in Christ. Different emphases at different times, right? So Jesus did serve. Jesus also ate with people and enjoyed company with them. Jesus provided healing in purposeful spaces, right? So that need for purpose of millennials, the need for connection. You look at it and you can see Jesus has all of these values. We tend to see the ones that we value most, but to recognize that, again, there isn't a value hierarchy. And that sense of, but I want you to learn that, is a really, really understandable feeling that I have. What I'll tell you is that as a mom and as I've worked with this, the more I switch my mentality towards understanding my kids, understanding families, and less about, but how do I make them do the thing that I think they should do, the more fulfilling ministry is. The more we really work towards that. Did you have something else to add before? Because we have some great stuff to get to.
Yeah, I was just noticing, what's the difference between fellowship and community?
You know, I will fully acknowledge I didn't look into that, and I have the same question. But I think it's the sense.
Up to the group,
Yeah.
The fellowship and community on the surface seems similar,
They do.
and yet you've got, for example, millennials who don't value fellowship,
But they value community.
And to understand that there may be a difference for some groups.
And I kind of touched on that a few minutes ago. I think Benjamin's here, and he may know better. I think the idea of fellowship is like that group worship mentality or potluck, you know, where we talk together, whereas community is finding your people, that you feel that they know you and you can trust them with who you really are and you don't have to be fake. And for some, that happens at potluck, but I think that's kind of the difference, is your community is your people, whereas a potluck lunch, you put on your smiles, you hang out, you get some social battery filled or drained, depending if you're an extrovert or introvert, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're forming those deeper relationships. So I think it's the deeper sense versus the group gathering feel. That's my guess as I study the words, but that's what I have. I didn't look into that. Yes?
So, real quick comment. To go with what you're presenting here,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the value in this would be to ask them, the individual family even, because it may mean different things for different people.
Do you want to come teach the seminar for me? Hold that thought. We're going to get there.
Yeah, ask them what
Okay, here's another similarity. Should churches reflect the beauty of God? Most people want to be somewhere that is enjoyable to be, right? The beauty of God, whether that's the church family that's there with a diversity, whether the space is cleaned up and well kept, they actually care. I find that, I thought that was really interesting, like how many, that's a pretty strong agreement that they want the church, and I believe they mean church building. Now I should look into that more, but they want it to reflect God. And I think that that's kind of an interesting, we have similarities, and it's super important to do this. And I'm going to come back to this over and over and over. Remember, oh, sorry. Rhonda wanted a picture. One picture. There you go. Rhonda wants a picture. I think these are being recorded, right, Benjamin? So this, you can go back and see this. Okay. You must, remembering the goal, again, you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he humbled himself in obedience to God. We humble ourselves as we learn from families and their values, right? We may value our values higher. We may have that. But when we listen and care, we are reflecting Christ. When we are willing to hear other people's perspectives and put equal value on their perspective, we are following Jesus, who went from God to human, right? If Jesus went from God to human form, can we put aside our opinions about why they're not doing the things that we think they should and truly care and listen and enter into their world and their mentality? All right. So, we have to let it go, folks. That's my big quote there. I appreciate the laugh. Quoting Elsa here. Let it go. I will not sing for you. You're welcome. We have to let go of the shoulds. I actually, my counselor had used the phrase, don't should all over yourself. They should be coming to church. They should be bringing my daughter, I don't have a daughter, but I do hear this, should be bringing my granddaughter to Sabbath school. They should be contributing to church every week. We have to let it go. It may be true, it's not happening, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I already had that slide, right? The culture they're in means it ain't going to happen whether or not the should is true. So every time you think of yourself saying should, you have to go, yep, that's true. It's not happening. Move on. We have to move on from the shoulds, okay? Another church should, like of being there every week or how you should participate or what you should do, it doesn't change it. It just makes us frustrated. So letting go of the shoulds is actually going to make you happier as well, right? Listen and care about the person you're talking to and then find new solutions to the problem instead of trying to fit the people into the old solution, okay? All right, next. Let go of finding the solution. You came here today to find out how to engage families in your church, and I'm not going to be telling you how to engage families in your church. Exactly. Because there isn't one solution. There isn't one size fits all. I cannot tell you what the church in 20 and 30 years is going to look like. It can be alive and thriving in a whole new way if we're willing to do that, but that's up to you, okay? I'm not here to give you one solution. All right. Oh, come on. I thought I had one more. All right. We have to let go of ulterior motives. Here's what I mean. If our goal is to get that person to come to church, and so when we ask questions, when we're getting to know them, we're just listening for a way to get them to come to church, they see it, they feel it, they read it. Even if they don't know it, it's not helpful. Our ulterior motive has got to only be to care about the person in front of us, to care about the families, to trust that God is working in their life in a unique way, and that may or may not involve you and your church. But we're trusting God with that person, and we're letting go of the motive of getting them to do the thing that's important to us. Does it matter that it's important to you? Yes, I'm so glad church is important to you. Church is important to me as well. But my goal can't be to make church important, my way of doing church important to you. That's never been the goal. That's the IKEA tool we talked about, right? That's an Allen wrench in a whole new world. Okay? Disney quotes again. I don't know what's in my brain today. All right. This is actually good news. It means that there are actually lots of options out there, okay? When we're not finding the solution, when we're not, we have to let go of negativity. We have to recognize that it may not look like an 11 o'clock thriving service anymore. And we have to instead look for where the positive things are happening. We have to look at the good things in culture. We're not going backwards in culture, guys. No matter how much we fight it, culture keeps going. And we have to let go of the judgment and the negativity and find joy in some of the changes. I have such amazing conversations with my 15 and 17-year-old that I never, ever would have had with my parents because of the culture of because I was taught more now, because of my generation being more into building relationship. I am having so much fun with my teenagers in a different way than my parents did, right? I can see a lot of value. And then what my kids are saying to me and the things they're saying, it is, my 17-year-old, I can't help but brag about him sometimes. He's working at Big Lake, and as is relatively normal, I tend to only hear negative reports, and then when he's happy, I don't hear from him for weeks. And so early on, he was complaining about somebody that he was working with that's technically one of his bosses. And I went to visit him last week, and I said, how's that going? He goes, I think I just don't like having to work for somebody. I think he's fine. He's 17. I did not have that awareness. Just recognizing his way is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. My problem is me. I don't like having somebody else tell me what to do. That level of self-awareness is incredible. Our kids are becoming more and more self-aware. If we can find in families getting away from comparison just leads to negativity and guilt and shame and anger. Instead, as you're listening and talking to your kids, to families that you know, to people, if you are looking for the positive and affirming the good, You're going to be building connections, and you're going to walk away from those conversations feeling whole, whether or not they ever set foot on your church property. You will feel, and they will feel loved and seen in ways that God is opening doors. All right? So we have to let go of negativity. And back on finding the solution, a note that I don't want to miss, I want to tell you this is really good news. Because I don't know if you remember, like, I remember reading books when I was coming into ministry that were like instruction manuals on the correct way to do church. And then I'd go to a church that wasn't doing it that way. And I'm not just meaning the church manual, I mean like the purpose-driven church or whatever it was. And I'd feel like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing all of these things. It's actually good news that there isn't one solution. Because it means that your church can operate uniquely in your community, and you can find the gifts that God has given you, and you can grow in unique ways that doesn't have to mean we're getting people to come to church in one way, right? This is good. This is openness. This is finding new ways. So, what do we do next? We know what not to do, hopefully, a little bit. What do we do? So here's my question. I'm going to actually do a little nod to my friend Benjamin back there. I think this is such a great approach. The who do you know? I want you to think right now, who do you know in your life at all, not even just that lives near you, whatever, that is a family with kids? Because we're talking about engaging families. Do you know families? You already have people to be building relationships with. Again, because we're letting go of getting them to come to church, this can be people that live across the world that you still know, that you have interacted with on Facebook, that you can start affirming and caring about and sending nice messages to, right? You have people that you have in your life that you get to love. Who do you already know that you can show love to? If the goal is now to share God's love, right, and not getting them to church, how much does that open up the who you know that you get to share some positivity and love with, right? That's a good question. Next, who is with you? In your community, in your church, who are the other people around you that you know also want to be connecting with families and engaging with families and finding new ways? Building community and talking to those people. I want you to think about that for a minute because I don't want that to skip by it. Like, truly think, who do I have in my life who would also want to be on this journey with me? Because we'll do so much better in our churches if we're partnering, okay? All right, you think of a name, you think of another name. I want to see some nods. You're actually thinking of real people, not just listening. You know people who also care. Who can you partner with, okay? Journeying with others is vital. It helps keep perspective because there are down times in this journey with Christ. And you need other people who can hold you up during those times when you just want to give up, okay? So who do you know? Who is with you? Ask good questions. I am not a natural question asker. I get in trouble with this all the time. I will go, my husband will be like, hey, can you go figure out, like what size, let's say we're redoing a kitchen, what size dishwasher we need? And I'll go and I take the measurements and I get there and I come back like, oh, he said we need all of this. And I'll go like, why do you need, I don't know, he said so. I don't do well at asking questions. And so when we're learning to care about people, we tend to ask from our own perspective, right? Like our values, we put the questions out about our values instead of really understanding theirs. So what do we do about that? I have a little slide that I cannot miss because I needed this kind of thing so much. Ready? Oh, sorry, did I skip one? Oh, and experiment on the margins. I'll get to the good questions next. I love that phrase, and it's what I've already talked about a little bit. This is not change the 11 o'clock service. This is find spots in your church, in your life. This doesn't have to take over your whole life. Many of us have very, very full lives. This is finding a margin that you can reach and care about somebody and see how it goes and build from there, not full on overhaul, okay? Because if we overhaul something that nobody's coming to, it's not gonna help anybody besides create a lot of distrust and dysfunction in a church, right? So finding where, is finding a space, a Tuesday morning that you can have a play group, that kind of idea. Those are margins you can play with in a church life. And again, don't go do that thing because I suggested it, because that may not be the need in your community, right? The families. Listening comes first. But just remember, we're not talking about making huge changes from the start. I genuinely believe that if our hearts are in it, then we find the spaces and the change happens organically. So, question asking 101. I'm going to do this kind of quickly because I really want to have time to get to our case studies, because that's where our brains really start working. So, when you are asking good questions, you're not trying to get time to send your opinion, you're actually asking questions to understand the other person's opinions, right? Tell me more. What do you mean? Like, help me understand. And just keep asking good questions, asking understand questions instead of opinion questions, right? Don't lead the witness. Instead, just genuinely ask. The way to genuinely ask is to actually care, to want to hear what they have to say. Not just so that you can go back and apply it to your church or argue with them, but care about the person and what their thoughts are. And then empathize, even though sometimes you're like, that is not a problem. How is that a problem for you? It's not a problem for me. If you care about the person, you can empathize with them, because sometimes phases of life are just hard, and seasons of life are just hard, and they are made as a different human than you. They don't have the same resources that you have. They don't have the same background that you built. They have their own. And to empathize with their hard time is just saying, I've also had hard times. My hard times might look different than theirs. Their hard time might not be hard for me. It's because I have that muscle built. They're building a new muscle. We can empathize because building muscle, I hate exercise. So let's just appreciate that it's hard, whatever it is. And repeat. This is not a chance to share your opinion with somebody else. This is not a chance to teach your view to somebody else. This is understand, care, empathize. Understand, care, empathize. Over and over and over until God comes back. All right? So, I want to give you really quick, I'm actually going to skip this a little bit. There are churches that are doing this. There are churches that are growing and thriving because and I will tell you, like I said, I'm going to skip some of these, but when I talk to their leaders, it's because their goal has truly become the people they're reaching instead of the service. They truly take time to understand who they're talking to, and then they adapt for those people. Okay? There are amazing stories. Australia's Gold Coast, this is a family-based Adventist church. They've done a 4 p.m. Sabbath service, which not all families loved. I have a very good friend who's there. But what she's very excited about is that her 11-year-old is like in charge of, he's the worship coordinator for one of the services. He's running the AV. And he keeps asking if he can do more, and the church keeps saying, sure. Is he doing it perfectly? No. But I said to her, I wish I could like send a media crew to your church and create a template so people could understand how to engage families. She goes, but it wouldn't help because it's truly just the attitude of the people.
Amen.
Right? What's working for their church isn't those things, is not the 4 o'clock service or the children in the praise band. It's that they are genuinely responsive to the people that they care about. They genuinely want families and kids as real families and kids, not this hypothetical that they think they remember from when they were young. Okay? They actually want the real families that they have to love church. And so they make those changes. It's the attitude. These other ones would apply to that too, but I want to get to our case studies. So, we have 3 case studies for you, and they're on your sheets there. I want you guys to brainstorm together as groups some solutions. So, one of the sheets, these are, by the way, these are fake. If they look familiar, I genuinely put descriptions into AI of, and don't tell my son because he's very much against me using AI for anything. Cannot live up to my son's standards. I'm having to accept that in life. I put generic descriptions of a multitude of different churches in our conference together, and it spit out this, and it's pretty amazing. I think I forgot to change Sunday to Sabbath. Forgive me on that. AI happens to be a Sunday-keeping organization. So we have Reviving Hope Church. It's rural. Its numbers have been going down, and most of the members are older. We have New Light SDA Church. It's an urban church. It has an active preschool, but few families are part of the actual church. And then we have Grace Point SDA Church. It's in a large Adventist community, and even though they have lots of people coming to church still, no one wants to volunteer, and there really doesn't seem to be any young adults around. All right? So these are AI-generated conglomerations. If it's familiar, it's because your story is a normal story. Each of you has more of a description there, and then I want you to read through the description as a group, have a group leader, read through it as quickly as you can. I know, we're going to be done we're going to have about 15 minutes to do this part, and then we're going to wrap up. Actually, I'm going to have 10 minutes because I really want to hear your ideas. So get to the ideas part. Then there's questions on the second page of what would you do with this church? If this is your church on your case study there's questions to follow up. How would you apply? In doing this, I'm asking you to remember what the goal is, what we've been teaching about, and apply it to the church that your group is assigned. All right? And go. All right. I want to hear from you guys. So, back to center. I love all the ideas coming out of you guys. This is so good. Applying what we learned. That's how we do this. Who had church reviving hope? Who had reviving hope? Okay. I'm going to get my sheet so I can see what questions we had for you. If you ever work for something and need to do case studies, though, man, I was really happy with how this happened. Okay, let me find my Reviving Hope sheet here. Here we go. So, this is our rural church in decline. What were some of the thoughts you guys had on some of the questions? Just share real fast one of the groups they had it. What are the things you want to share about some options? Yes?
Well, one of the big issues that they're facing is the smaller rural communities are having declining across the board, not just within the community, but within the faith community, but also across the entire community. You've got more and more younger families that are going.
So younger families aren't around. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
They're around. They're in other areas. The younger families are looking for a younger, more upbeat, more mainstream worship style, and the older communities like it a little bit more slower.
All right. Those are some of the reasons they don't want to come to this Reviving Hope. All right. Did you guys get to any of the some better understanding ideas for the church?
Yeah, we looked at broadening our toolbox and really kind of learning what it is, how we can reach these families, and then also inter-community, because a lot of little communities around can come together and share resources, share kids, share young adults, share that leadership, and create a larger group, which can create those smaller communities to draw in.
All right. Love it. Shared resources, getting to know others. All right. Who else had Reviving Hope Church? You guys did? Yes? What are some of I'd love to get to what are some of your thoughts of what ideas that they can have? Did you get to some of those?
Well, we kind of talked about relationships and getting outside of the church. Don't change the church structure necessarily, but having stuff where we connect with families in a different way, such as, and we're kind of speaking from experience, but creating like a place like a Friday fellowship thing with a fire pit and having people come for dinner.
Feeding families and making it a comfortable space for kids.
Let's
right.
feed them, let's connect with
right.
them,
So finding other ways to connect and that feeds them in all the ways.
Gym night on Saturday night.
Right.
Where they can come and play.
I think those are great, and as a young, when I had littler kids, somebody else worrying about feeding my kids and being in a space that I wasn't worried that they were going to break something, those were things that I needed. Absolutely. Okay. Who had New Light? Who had New Light? All right. What do you guys got for us?
So for question 1, ways to build relationship, we're thinking. Okay.
What are some of the solutions? Yeah.
Probably starting an adventure group for the preschoolers, having some of the members volunteer at the preschool.
So starting a group that the preschoolers would want to be a part of that's outside of the church service. Okay.
Right, and for the members, like adopt a grandparent so they could go over. And
Okay. Oh, so the members can go connect more with the preschool, be a grandparent for the preschool. Yep.
preschool
Okay.
leaders. And for the leaders of the preschool and the church to connect and find ways that each other can collaborate instead of being so independent.
Okay, so working together across the two groups and finding ways to support. All right. Do you want to add more before I move on? Did somebody else have New Light? You guys did? Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, our thoughts were involve every age group in some way. Listen to and accept others' points of view
Yep.
and focus on common ground.
I love it. Focusing on common ground, listening to the families. That's great.
Preschool needs to be the top role.
All right, so getting the church to really minister to the preschool.
The community,
Wonderful. Excellent. Asking the community the needs and serving the needs that are actually the felt needs of the community. You guys are smart. I love it. Okay. Grace Point. Large Adventist community, connected to Adventist schools, volunteerism is down, and young adults are absent.
All right, that was us.
All right.
So we saw that they have some Adventist schools there, so could we coordinate some stuff with the schools, making sure the calendars match? You know, we're not gonna do something when the schools are doing something, have some group events between the two, just to have some connections.
Okay.
You know, maybe having the church members do some volunteering with the schools, so there's some crossover.
Okay.
As far as the volunteering, we were thinking, you know, instead of having one person do something every week, maybe get a team of 8 people. So people are more willing to commit to once a month or once a.
Yeah.
So bigger.
Being flexible on what it is to volunteer and commit, you can find more space and
you can be
capacity.
part of a team, which
Right.
you know, makes that community. Which
It does. You build the community there.
So instead of you being the only one,
Okay.
could you do it on a lesser level?
Right.
Maybe. And then we thought for the younger people, you know, just some different creative things. A lot of churches have a gym, doing an open night where you do volleyball or.
Okay.
She was saying like they bought a house with a pool during August. They
Right.
open it up every.
So creating some
Saturday.
social opportunities for them.
Hot August nights.
Hot August nights. I like it.
And then they swim and then they eat.
All right. Feed the hungry children. I love it. I would love to have more time on this, but we are going to have to end here soon. What I love hearing is you guys saying, like, there are ideas and things we can try and places we can go. It is easy on Sabbath morning to look around and feel like this is dying. But flip that and say, where are the opportunities? Where can we be getting in? If you are leaning into relationships with people you know, even if they live far away, right, and listening and caring, you are going to get more joy and more energy. We're trusting God with the church and trusting that when Jesus said, go and love people, that God would, that the numbers side and all of that was on God. That was never our job to worry about, right? Our job was always to worry, how am I loving people better for Jesus? All right. I would love to hear really fast from you guys. What are your key takeaways from today? I want to know what came through. Anybody want to volunteer? One of your top takeaway from today?
That despite generational differences, we have quite a bit in common.
All right. Lots more in common than we thought. I love that. Yes?
Really, our responsibility we have is to try to connect in a caring and meaningful way as the primary, and be appreciative of the secondary, which is a church, participation and growth.
Absolutely. Primary is caring. Love that. Yes, Verna?
Church is not 11 o'clock Sabbath morning. Church is
Preach.
7 days a week.
Church is 7 days a week. Absolutely. Yes?
Ask questions and actually listen.
Ask questions. I only say things that I need to tell myself over and over again. Yeah.
I think with all the technology that we have these days, I think that we are craving that connection.
Yes. Absolutely. We are craving connection. Yes.
And I think we need to use technology more, some of us older ones, to connect with people. We tend to shy away.
We might need to accept that it's just the reality and that it can be a connecting point.
And maybe try to connect with people on blogging or something like that, where
Yeah.
you make connections. And also, church doesn't have to be like, we did it. And that was big for me, because I tend to think it should be like you, like I liked it.
I get it. And you can like it, and that's wonderful. Yes?
So that just reminded me of a moment. My son connected with a gal that was at our church that was older, and she shared a song with him, and then he listened to it, he liked the song, so then he, on his own accord, later shared the song with her, and she called me crying and said, this 18-year-old guy cares about little old me, like this kid took the time out, but
Right.
really it was her taking the time out
Right.
with him.
Absolutely. It is so true. To end in 2 minutes, here are two of my hopeful, yes, Stephen, your last one, and then I want to give you my hopeful takeaways.
I just wanted to, the takeaway for me was, we always talk about all these different things that we can do or try to do to get people to come to church. From my experience, I believe the best thing that we can do is get to know Jesus better for ourselves. Because
Preach.
once we know him better, all that stuff is going to become natural.
Right. That is so true. That is so true. Okay. Here are some ones that I hope you go away with. Sorry, what will you take away today? Sorry. There is no perfect arrival point. All right? Having a full church at 11 o'clock Saturday morning is a wonderful, beautiful thing, but it is not the arrival point. All right? We have to continue growing. We have to see opportunities. There isn't a magic solution. Loving God has never been more important, and sharing God's love has never been more important or readily available. People all over desperately need to feel loved, and we have the chance to do that. All right? So we're not aiming for 11 o'clock. Always grow with God, right? Get to know Jesus, grow in loving others, grow in building relationships and connection. Then things will flow out of that. If our goal is to grow in understanding, to grow in love, to grow in caring about others, the flow will happen naturally. The ideas, the change will happen organically. All right? So we grow with God, we grow in loving others, and we grow in building relationships. All right? Thank you. Oh, wait, you writing? I was going to go to the next slide, but I'll wait. Thank you, guys. I'll have a prayer, and then we'll let people go. And if you want to come stay and talk to me, I'll stick around for a little bit, okay? All right, let's have prayer. Lord, you can do incredible things through each person in this room. Help us to listen to you and to care about others. That's really all you asked us to do. Love God, love others. We make it so complicated. Show us how to go from here and do that better. Thank you, Lord. Amen.